Because he's small Iowa himself.
I trust Jim Lightfoot, and that's something that is hard to find in anyone anymore.
If we had more people like Jim in Congress, we wouldn't have many of the problems that we have today.
You're watching Channel 5. From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We're going to begin tonight by reporting what we have learned today about the Soviet attack on Korean Airlines Flight 007 in 1983. It's been a long time coming, a very long time for the Russians to admit that as early as 3 months after the plane was shot down by a Soviet fighter, the Russians knew they had nothing to back up their claim that the Korean plane was spying on Russian territory. All 269 people on board were killed. That included 63 Americans, including a congressman. ABC's John Donvan reports from Moscow tonight that the Russians could have been more forthcoming.
Boris Yeltsin said he was opening the file on Flight 007 in order to make the truth clear. But the contents of the file, handed over to American relatives of the victims and to Russian journalists who have been investigating the incident, leave many questions unanswered. In a report to then-Soviet leader Yuri Andropov, the Soviet defense minister and the head of the KGB said, quote, "We have not succeeded in obtaining direct evidence of the espionage nature of the plane." But what is confusing is that the same report insists that Flight 007 crossed into Soviet airspace intentionally. There is evidence in the file that only 18 minutes before it went down, the plane was in contact with another Korean airliner whose crew would probably have known that Flight 007 was off course. What the file does not explain is why the aircraft, whose wreckage lies on the bottom of the Sea of Japan, had wandered off course and over Sakhalin Island, Soviet territory. Raw data from the plane's flight recorder are not included in the file that Yeltsin handed over today. However, transcripts of the cockpit conversation are. According to the Russian journalists, those transcripts show the plane's pilot had time after the plane was hit to tell passengers to fasten their seatbelts and put on their oxygen masks. Then, the final transmission. Tokyo, this is KAL 007. Don't break contact. Give me instructions. We are losing pressure fast. I'm going down to 10,000 feet. Then silence. Relatives of passengers who were on that flight say Russia has taken an important first step toward solving the mysteries surrounding Flight 007. Tomorrow they have meetings with 2 senior officials appointed by Boris Yeltsin to answer the follow-up questions raised by what Russia has revealed today. John Donvan, ABC News, Moscow.
Still in Russia today, a guilty verdict for the man who carries the label world's most deadly serial killer. Andrei Chikatilo was convicted of torturing and killing 52 boys, girls, and young women. He went on killing for 12 years before he was caught. The cage is to protect him from the family members of his victims. Sentencing is expected tomorrow. A court-appointed psychiatrist says Chikatilo is sane, and so he'll either be executed or sentenced to life in prison. In a moment, the other news was politics involved when the State Department told its embassies overseas to dig up information on Bill Clinton. On the American agenda tonight, how the candidates would give parents a greater say in where their children go to school. And some fraternities at one school, UCLA, in hot water for the songs they sing.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by Carnival Cruise Lines.
Know where I am? I'm at one of the finest resorts in the world, and if you're looking for a great vacation value, look no more. All your daytime fun, all your nighttime entertainment, and all your food is included in one low price. But what makes this resort really great is that it takes you to some of the world's other great vacation spots. In the morning, in the evening, Carnival's got the fun.
Fun. That's what makes Carnival the most popular cruise line in the world.
How many? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lisa. Happy birthday to you. Yay!
In presidential politics today, a new reason for confrontation between the Bush administration and the Clinton campaign. The State Department has confirmed today that last month a senior official told U.S. embassies in Britain and Norway to search their files for any information on Bill Clinton during his years as a graduate student in England during the 1960s. Dirty tricks, say the Democrats. Just routine, say the Republicans. Here's ABC's John McWethy.
Governor Clinton pointed to today's newspaper headline as proof that the State Department was going through his personal records for political purposes. The State Department said it acted properly in responding to Freedom of Information requests from reporters who have been doing their own investigations of Clinton's student days at Oxford.
I absolutely do feel that there is no inappropriate behavior at all in this, that the actions of the department's officials were directed at carrying out the law.
Spokesman Richard Boucher confirmed that it was unusual for Elizabeth Tamposi, an Assistant Secretary of State who was appointed by George Bush, to personally phone U.S. embassies in London and Oslo to urge a thorough search for information on Clinton. Has she had any contact with the Bush campaign or the White House?
I asked her, she said no.
Boucher claimed it was not unusual to pull passport and visa files, even though that kind of information is confidential and could not be handed over to the media anyway. The Clinton campaign is buying none of it.
It's plain that the White House is politically using the State Department in a blatant attempt to politicize the entire State Department bureaucracy.
Whether the Bush administration acted unusually or not, all the digging through Clinton's records has failed to provide any new revelations about the governor. Just another issue for the two sides to fight over. John McWethy, ABC News, Washington.
In the aftermath of the vice presidential debate, there was certainly not afterglow for a lot of people. Senator Gore said today he didn't jump to Governor Clinton's defense because he didn't have to. The Bush administration, he said, is unraveling, and George Bush is in a political panic. None of that from the White House as the president welcomed Vice President Quayle back from Atlanta. First-class performance, said Mr. Bush, a home run. Ross Perot's running mate, James Stockdale, said he was taken aback by last night's events, and his wife said she found the proceedings gruesome. Well, after the debate last night, we heard a great many people wondering whether, after all the punching and the counter-punching, had the candidates actually been straight with the facts. So we asked ABC's Jim Wooten to go back over the transcript and check it out.
Let's talk about. Well,
let him talk, Senator.
Just lighten up here, Al.
The blue ribbon for factual flexibility goes to the Vice President. More often than Senator Gore, Mr. Quayle was either mistaken or misinformed. For instance, on the environment, referring to Gore's best-selling book.
One of the proposals that Senator Gore has suggested is to have the taxpayers of America spend $100 billion a year on environmental projects in foreign countries.
That is not true. Gore's book proposes a global plan financed by several countries, not the U.S. alone, and it does not specify a total cost or America's share.
On the Democrats' proposed goals for automobile fuel efficiency,
increasing the CAFE standards, the fuel economy standards to 45 miles a gallon is a good idea. 300,000 people out of work.
That estimate is based on an unlikely worst-case scenario that all workers now building cars which do not meet that standard would eventually lose their jobs.
I was in Middletown, Ohio, talking to a welfare woman where she
was worried, he said, about losing health care benefits if she took a job.
Under President Bush's health care reform package, that woman won't have to make a choice about going back to work or health care for her children, because she'll have both.
Not necessarily true. If she made about $16,000, all she would get under the president's plan is a $375 tax credit to be used toward health insurance that costs the average family $5,000 a year.
Senator Gore was loose with the facts or his interpretation of them on the subject of trade.
You know full well the Caribbean Basin Initiative. You've supported that. That is a program there.
I voted against it.
He did vote against it twice, but he also voted for it once as part of a larger legislative package.
On arms control, Gore said Bush had failed to eliminate Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles and made matters worse by putting Secretary of State Baker in charge of his campaign.
But when he took the person in charge of the negotiations out of the State Department and put him in charge of the re-election campaign, the deal unraveled.
In fact, the commitment from Russian President Yeltsin is a fairly standard step in the negotiating process. And arms control experts say the removal of Secretary Baker is of no consequence to those negotiations. The bad news is that in campaign debates, as in war, truth is usually the first casualty. The good news is that most voters know that already. Jim Wooten, ABC News, New York.
In our campaign notes tonight, more information about Governor Clinton's health. At the urging of reporters, his campaign has released letters from 4 doctors today which say the governor has a few common allergies and weighs a little too much at times. Other than that, he is fine. There's a new development today in a banking and political scandal that may have implications for President Bush. It's the case of the Italian Banco Nazionale Lavoro, or BNL, whose Atlanta branch made billions of dollars in illegal loans to Iraq before the Gulf War. The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, David Boren, has asked the Attorney General to appoint an independent counsel to investigate why the Bush administration has not been more candid about its knowledge of what the bank was doing. Here's ABC's Tim O'Brien.
The CIA and the Justice Department have already admitted misleading prosecutors and Congress about the Atlanta Bank and its illegal loans to Iraq. Senator Boren said today an independent counsel is needed to investigate those agencies because they cannot be trusted to investigate themselves.
I think we have an obligation to look into this matter further. And I think we clearly cannot say that the Justice Department is in a position to investigate itself.
The FBI had been investigating all of this, but Boren and others say that investigation might be compromised because the Justice Department is now investigating the ethics of the FBI director, William Sessions. Those allegations include charges that Sessions may have made false statements to avoid paying D.C. income taxes and that he may have made numerous personal long-distance telephone calls on FBI phones. Some Democrats in Congress say they suspect the charges may be a smokescreen to distract attention from the administration's role in the Iraqi loan scandal.
Well, it certainly is changing the subject and taking attention away from that particular investigation.
A Justice Department spokesman called ludicrous any suggestion that the Sessions inquiry is politically motivated, that it began months before it was even known the CIA and Justice had withheld information about the illegal bank loans. At the FBI and earlier as a federal district court judge, Sessions has enjoyed a sterling reputation for integrity. His supporters insist that this latest flap is not so much a matter of ethics as it is politics. Tim O'Brien, ABC News, Washington.
In economic news today, wholesale prices and retail sales both went up last month. The cost of gasoline pushed the wholesale prices up 0.3%. That's the largest increase since last April. And retail sales also went up 0.3% in September. Hurricane Andrew pushed up demand for building supplies and lumber in Florida and in Louisiana. On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrials lost nearly 6 points to close at 31.95. The trading was moderate. When we do come back, serious news, what can happen if you give up caffeine too suddenly?
Doctor.
Is it right for me?
Habitrol. It's a patch.
You know the patch? Habitrol. You know, Habitrol.
It's a patch. Habitrol.
Habitrol.
Habitrol Nicotine Transdermal System. Available by prescription only.
Thank you, Doctor.
Day after day, you make those glasses of thick Metamucil disappear. Why not make them all disappear with FiberCon? Doctor-recommended FiberCon gives you the same fiber regularity in tablets.
Easy to swallow tablets.
Get doctor-recommended FiberCon.
It has 4 independent motors, an intricate steel frame, even an electronically regulated temperature control system. And that's just the driver's seat. The Lexus ES300 luxury sedan.
This is one way to cut some fat from your family's diet. This is a whole new way. Introducing new Promise Ultra, the spread that's the absolute lowest in fat of any leading brand. That's right. Promise Ultra is the lowest in fat. Plus, it has 65% fewer calories than margarine and a light, delicate taste. So cut some fat from your family's diet a whole new way with Promise Ultra. Get heart smart.
On the Health Watch this week, sobering news for the 4 out of 5 Americans who are regular consumers of drinks that contain caffeine, coffee, tea, many soft drinks. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine says that many caffeine users will develop significant and unpleasant withdrawal symptoms if they try to quit cold turkey. Here's our medical editor, Dr. Tim Johnson.
The study looked at 62 adults whose caffeine consumption was typical of the average American, about 235 milligrams of caffeine per day. That is the equivalent of 2 strong cups of coffee, or 4 cups of tea, or 4 cans of caffeinated soft drinks, or 1 or 2 over-the-counter pain or diet pills containing caffeine. The researchers found that when those taking part in the study were suddenly deprived of their usual caffeine intake, many of them developed withdrawal symptoms within 2 days. Approximately 10% complained of fatigue and mood changes, including anxiety or depression, and 52% developed moderate to severe headaches.
I was vomiting, I was in bed, severe headaches, I'm the type that where you can't concentrate because your head hurts so bad.
Dr. Roland Griffiths, the head of the study, says it's time to consider caffeine as a psychoactive substance that can cause disturbing withdrawal symptoms.
If you want to eliminate your caffeine intake, then you should probably taper back rather than abruptly stopping your caffeine use.
There is no evidence that the amount of caffeine most Americans consume is actually dangerous in terms of causing disease. But many people find even these small amounts will cause jitteriness or insomnia. And if they want to quit caffeine, they may find it easier to taper off over several days or weeks rather than be discouraged by the withdrawal symptoms caused by sudden stoppage. Dr. Timothy Johnson, ABC News.
There were 2 more Nobel Prizes today. George Charpak of France won the prize for physics. He invented the device that detects some of the smallest particles in the universe. The chemistry prize went to American Rudolf Marcus. He devised simple mathematical formulas to explain how molecules react with each other. In baseball, it really is going to be a World Series this year. The Toronto Blue Jays have won the American League pennant. They beat the Oakland A's 9-2 in Toronto this afternoon. They are the first Canadian team ever to reach the World Series, and they will play the winner of tonight's final game between Pittsburgh and Atlanta. When we come back, the American agenda.
Ace is a place for helpful hardware folks and Best Buys like these.
This Ace 24-inch poly lawn rake is only $3.99, and the 25-foot Ace tape rule is just $6.88.
Ace Best Buy.
Another reason Ace is the place.
For you.
There's a certain itch that's so private, most people will only discuss it with their doctor. Fortunately, you can get Anusol HC1 ointment over the counter with the same prescription strength doctors have prescribed most.
With steadfast stares, the people cry for a future new world. Time that goes by, the touch, the feel, the fabric of our lives. The touch, the feel of cotton, the fabric of our lives.
We'd like to introduce you to the new Nissan Altima GLE.
Altima? Huh, so that's what it's called.
It comes with a 6-speaker CD system, an available leather trim. It has a powerful 150 horsepower engine, and it has more than 40 standard safety features.
Wow, would you look at that?
The new Altima, the affordable luxury sedan from Nissan.
I wonder what they mean by affordable.
I dreaded this visit to the doctor. I had stomach problems. You know, more chalky medicine to take. I mean, just getting it down is... But what my doctor told me about really blew my mind. New Mylanta gel caps.
Introducing the antacid with absolutely no chalky taste. New Mylanta gel caps. Potent antacid relief now in an easy-to-swallow gel cap. New Mylanta gel caps.
My doctor said Mylanta.
If you watched the vice presidential debate last night, you saw the vice presidential candidates be very critical of one another's approach to educational reform. They were arguing primarily about how much support Governor Clinton or President Bush will give parents in making a choice as to where they will send their children to school. Now, we put this matter on the agenda, this matter of choice, because it is such a divisive issue about which many parents feel so strongly. At its core, it is very much an argument about public or private school. Our education reporter is Bill Blakemore.
And when it comes to schools, I say, let the parents choose, public, private, or religious.
While I support public school choice, and our state was the second state to adopt it, I am unalterably opposed to a voucher system to give people public money to take to private schools.
It is their sharpest disagreement on education over a Bush proposal that vouchers funded by tax dollars can be used to help pay tuition at private and religious schools. Bush wants federal vouchers of $1,000 each for low and middle income parents to use at any school they want.
To give low-income families more of the same choices of schools already available to wealthier families.
Clinton charges the plan would not really help the poor and would drain badly needed money from public schools.
America is already spending a smaller percentage of its income on kindergarten through 12th grade education than 8 or 9 of our competitors. There is no reason to believe that diverting public money to private schools on a national basis will make education better.
Bush and Clinton do not disagree about the need to give parents more choice among schools. Both believe choice invigorates schools by creating healthy competition and by getting parents involved. The Bush administration has actively promoted choice among public and private schools across the country. In Arkansas, Clinton has pushed public school choice, and students there can now choose from a variety of schools, even outside their home districts. Camilla Shoemaker, for example, travels 35 miles each way to attend a Little Rock school which has the advanced music classes she wants. Clinton would expand similar public school choice throughout the country. The Arkansas Choice Plan requires that schools maintain their racial balance. There is no such requirement in the Bush plan, and critics fear that if parents use vouchers to opt out of public schools, that would lead to more segregation.
We could get economic and racial resegregation of our schools. The wealthy would be able to exercise choice. If there's no ride to the school of the choice, the poor family wouldn't be able to go.
Even if they could afford to. Critics of the voucher plan point out that a $1,000 voucher still won't let poor students afford most private schools, which average $6,000 tuition.
The kinds of financing that are proposed don't strike me as particularly helpful to the bottom end, and particularly not helpful to the children most at risk, the inner city children.
There is reason to believe that voucher money would go to people who don't really need it. In Colorado, for example, support for a state voucher plan has fallen after analysts pointed out that parents already paying for their kids to go to private schools could get vouchers totaling $85 million. That's money which would be taken from public school budgets without improving anyone's education. Opponents also charge that Bush is insisting on including private and religious schools to attract religious voters at the expense of public education. Bush says public schools will be helped.
We think choosing public, private, religious schools makes all schools better. Competition never hurt anything.
Clinton argues public education means the government, entrusted with public money, has to make sure there are good schools for all kids. He believes the federal money Bush would put into vouchers would be better spent on smaller classes and better teaching, especially for the nation's most disadvantaged students. So on the issue of school choice, one candidate believes that paying for kids to leave the public schools will improve American education. The other believes that would harm it and wants to concentrate federal money and efforts on rebuilding public schools. Bill Blakemore, ABC News.
As for Ross Perot's position, he says he's in favor of school choice, but his campaign told us today he does not support giving vouchers because he thinks it would lead to government regulation of private schools. On the agenda tomorrow, how the candidates say they'll make college more affordable. In a moment, songs and sexism on campus.
Every presidential election in the 20th century has had enormous implications for America and the world. Through it all, Merrill Lynch has understood those implications, and we continue to use that understanding to help you shape your future as we move forward together.
If you suffer from sinus attacks with awful pain and pressure, try Dristan Sinus. Unlike any of these, which have exactly the same medicine, Dristan Sinus combines the leading decongestant with the modern pain reliever, ibuprofen. It'll relieve awful pressure and ease sinus pain, all without drowsiness. Dristan Sinus with ibuprofen. And to treat your cold symptoms, there's a Dristan product that's right for you. Dristan, the face of relief today.
Polyshades by Minwax. It's a stroke of genius. Polyshades is rich stain and polyurethane protection in one. Polyshades gives wood a beautiful protective finish in half the time. Polyshades by Minwax.
Most do-it-yourself books tell you how to start projects. The Minwax Tips booklet tells you how to finish them, refinish them, spot repair them, and take care of them easily. Call 1-800-44-STAIN now for your free 30-page tips booklet.
Tonight on Nightline, what could be more popular than the baseball playoffs? Try the 92 campaign. With 3 teams on the field, no one's getting bored. Tonight.
Finally from us this evening, trouble on Fraternity Row. Fraternities have been a part of American college life for almost as long as there have been American colleges. They've often been accused of fostering social and racial divisiveness. Those accusations have taken on a new urgency at the campus of UCLA, where the fraternity's private songbooks have become public knowledge. Here's ABC's Brian Rooney.
Students protested in front of the Theta Xi house after a campus feminist magazine printed the obscene lyrics of the fraternity's songbook, which refer to women, minorities, and homosexuals in terms that cannot be repeated here. One song describes sex with an 8-year-old Mexican girl. Leaders of the fraternity are apologetic, saying they stopped singing those songs a year and a half ago, but their critics dispute that.
Women have come into our office and told us that they've been on beer buses and in fraternity houses at parties, just like last weekend, the weekend before, and they've heard these songs sung.
There have been similar protests about fraternity practices across America, but they are particularly divisive at UCLA, which is less than 50% white and has one of the most racially diverse student bodies in the country. Contrite fraternity leaders are hard-pressed to explain why their traditions have changed so slowly.
This is definitely a societal problem. I mean, this is something that came up here in this fraternity at UCLA, but I mean, come on, take a look at our society.
The fraternities say they are teaching members to be more sensitive to women and minorities, but last night at a noisy meeting of the student government to discuss the problem, the fraternities walked out. The student government later voted to disassociate itself from the Interfraternity Council. The university administration also is contemplating punitive action that could include banning Theta Xi.
I think it's part of a group behavioral process. I think we have to do what we can to make as certain as we can that it won't happen again.
The university knows it could happen again, but the old notion that boys will be boys has changed to boys must grow up. Brian Rooney, ABC News, Los Angeles.
And that's our report on World News Tonight. A little later this evening, Nightline. I'm Peter Jennings. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
It will touch your heart.
Are you happy living with your foster parents?
Taking away this woman's rights as a parent is a big deal. Tickle your fancy.
I want to go to a hotel with you right this minute, Charlie.
And leave you breathless.
Eli!
Civil Wars. It only looks like television tonight.
My heating system, it's down there purring like a kitten. Things solid as a rock. Never think about it.
The best time to think about your heating system is now. So call your Carrier dealer today. We're the guys who know best when it comes to making it better inside.
Call Bell Brothers and take advantage of rebates of up to $1,000 with a qualifying Carrier heat pump. For details, call Bell Brothers, the energy professionals.
Tonight, it'll touch your heart.
Are you happy living with your foster parents?
Taking away this woman's rights as a parent is a big deal. Tickle your fancy.
I want to go to a hotel with you right this minute, Charlie.
The truth is, I've been in love with you since the day we met. And and leave you breathless.